whether you're a staff nurse in the ICU, an ICU educator, the manager, the director of nurses, you work within a system to provide care for the patient. So where does pressure injury prevention fit in your system? In this third part, we're going to take a look at the hospital system providing patient care system management. So the policies, the procedures, the legal exposure, and those kinds of things. Many hospitals have adopted standardized protocols, be it for sepsis, venous thromboembolism, ventilator-associated pneumonia, catheter-associated urinary tract infection, central line infection, and hopefully you have one on pressure injury prevention. I've put some data up for you from some of the published results of folks that have adopted standardized protocols for pressure injury prevention. And obviously they range a great deal depending on the type of patient that you are routinely caring for. But looking at just the ICU, you can see with the adoption of standardized protocols, you can reduce pressure injury rates by somewhere around 50%. And that's significant for the patient, significant for the staff, and significant for the system. So if you don't have a standardized protocol in your facility yet, please consider adopting one, because once we as staff nurses do the same thing over and over again, that habitual practice becomes easier and easier to do, and you start to get better outcomes from it. The Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality, or the AHRQ, tracks on the number of hospital-acquired conditions in patients, reportable patient conditions, or HACs, in the United States, and creates these infographics every so many years on them. I've pulled up a couple I want to show you. The data being presented is the number of changes in the reporting of all of the hospital-acquired conditions. And you can see that, overall, hospitals are doing very well in most of these. But I want to focus your attention on a couple of them. Of course, pressure injuries is one. You knew that we'd be going there. The pressure injury rate is up 10% across the nation. This is through 2016. And the CAUTI rate is up by 4%. Now, overall, the rates are down and we're doing well. But what's happening? Why are those rates going up? You can see that we made no gain in surgical site infection in that same amount of time. Here's the more recent one. Now I realize it's 2017, but this is the most recent one I could find. And the numbers have changed a little bit, right? Right. Well, what do you see happening? You see that the CAUTI rate went down. The pressure injury rate is still high. Oh, dang it. Surgical site infection rate crept up. You know what these charts remind me of? Now, I don't know if you take your kids out to the arcades or you go to the arcades. You ever play the whack-a-mole game? Yeah, it's the one where the rodent pops up and you keep trying to hit it down with the rubber mallet. That's what these charts remind me of, is the whack-a-mole game. So we've got an uptick in hospital-acquired catheter-associated UTI. And our hospital, maybe like yours, put out a whole new set of policies on who could have Foley catheters and who had to have them removed and how we couldn't have the tubing draining below the level of the bladder, all that stuff. Well, and we reduced the rates because everybody was focused on that for at least that period of time. So what do hospitals do? They take a look at their numbers over some period of time, quarterly, half-year, yearly rates, and let's say that pressure injuries are up in your hospital. So the administrative team forms a new or better pressure injury prevention committee, and they survey either the care that's done or the policies that are in place, and they formulate new policies and they educate people on the policies, and everybody's focused on, this is pressure injury prevention month, and we drive the pressure injury rates down, and something else pops up. Well, that to me is all too common. I'm going to call again on a good friend of mine, Kathleen Vollman, to talk about what she's seeing. And is this a whack-a-mole game? And maybe there's a better way to handle this problem. Kathleen, what's your thought?
Joyce, that's a really great question. And I've experienced that as a frontline clinical nurse specialist and also as a consultant with multiple hospitals on pressure injury prevention. It's a challenge because you experience success in one area. Let's say you reduce successfully your pressure injuries, and all of a sudden your CAUTIs go up, or your CAUTIs go down because that's what you focused on. I sort of call it the whack-a-mole principle. That's what you focused on, and then pressure injuries increase. And you're wondering, how am I ever going to be successful at sustaining the change, and how am I going to manage all of these quality initiatives that are taking place in our units and institutions today? So, one of the ways that I address this is by taking a look at what similarities exist in these quality initiatives with regards to nursing care. And what it really comes down to, and the goal for registered nurses, is preventing harm to our patients. So I sort of divide it into two buckets. An infection prevention bucket, which focuses on work such as reducing urinary tract infections, catheter-associated bloodstream infections, C. difficile, hand hygiene, oral hygiene to reduce ventilator or non-ventilator pneumonia, and also patient bathing. And the second bucket really revolves around mobilization, and this means both in and out of bed mobilization. And what falls under that champion's umbrella is pressure injury prevention, falls, and also safe patient handling. And this really streamlines their focus and really allows for this more holistic approach versus that whack-a-mole in preventing injury to our patients. I also recommend, instead of rounding on individual CAUTI initiative or individual quality initiatives like catheter rounds for CAUTI or CLABSI, or skin rounds for pressure injury, I like to, I really believe it's important for the frontline nurse and the unit culture itself to look at the patient more holistically. And also, I believe it's important that the way we round also helps to build the critical thinking of the frontline nurse. Because if I just come up with a list, check, 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 it feels like a bunch of tasks, versus these are essential interventions that I'm doing to prevent harm in my patient. And so when I round, I'm asking questions of, what do you want to see happen with this patient today? What goal do you have for them? And also, how are we going to prevent harm from taking place in this patient today? And it really gets them to think about those risk areas, strategies that they can use to prevent, and it really enters the DNA. So it's seen as more of that do no harm than this is just another initiative, just another task that somebody wants me to do.